Loose leash training is a lost art in our society right now. We have a billion-dollar industry of no-pull products. Buy this magic tool and your dog will walk on a perfect loose leash. And so we see them everywhere, from head collars to prong collars to front clip harnesses to leashes that wrap around all the dog's legs. And so we have this explosion of people who are not loose leash training their dog. And the unfortunate thing is that almost all of these products create a little bit of stress in the dog because we haven't taught them how to accept loose leash walking. We have just enforced our control upon them. So when we force control on a dog, it doesn't teach them how to actually accept that. And so if your dog does not understand leash rules, that is going to contribute especially to their frustration and maybe even their fear. If you are a very poor handler, a dog is not going to want you having control of them because they are going to be afraid of that. And so if dogs don't see the leash as a mental barrier and just a physical one, they're going to attempt to pull through it. So if we haven't taught dogs to actually watch us and watch where we're going, and we just use physical controls, that's going to be frustrating. And how you handle that leash is going to lead to a huge reason why you may have a reactive dog. And if your dog cannot walk on a loose leash without distractions, it's very difficult to expect that they are then going to behave themselves when there are high-level distractions around. So one of our most important aspects is how we actually handle our leash. So the very first rule of our leash is we want to hold it by around the halfway point. So we don't want to be holding our leash by the very end and allowing our dog to have all of this leash to backlash around with. So we want to make sure that we hold it about the halfway point. And the other really important leash tip is we want to make sure that it's loose. So most reactive dog owners actually hold their leash like I'm holding it now, which is putting artificial pressure up on the dog. So we want to make sure that we hold our leash actually with our hands right down beside our waist, so there is no pressure that is caused by ourselves and only pressure that would be caused by the dog pulling forward. We also want to make sure that we never use our leash to forcefully move our dog. So I'm not going to pull Freya around. If I want her to move over here, I'm going to ask her like I would my friend. I'm also never going to use the leash as a punisher. So I'm never going to jerk her around if I don't like what she's doing. So we always want to make sure our leash is nice and loose, we're not jerking the dog around, and we aren't giving them too much leash to get in trouble with. We also want to make sure that we never reward our dogs by moving forward on a tense leash. So if your dog does move forward and the leash is tense, we need to do something. We cannot allow our dogs to simply forge ahead and learn that it's okay to do that behavior. The other thing is that we want to be rewarding our dogs when they are walking beside us. So when Freya is beside me like this, I want to be either giving her a food reward or at the very least looking at her and smiling and telling her what a good dog she is for being in this position, because this is where I want her to be all the time when we are moving around. It's also important to understand that the walk is for your dog. It is not for you. So you might get some exercise out of it, but it's really for the dog. So if your dog wants to sniff a blade of grass, if they want to nibble on a little piece of grass, if they want to check out every tree, you really should consider letting them. You can still guide the dog, but you want the dog to feel as free as possible. We don't want to micromanage our dogs, and we want our dogs to actually get some enrichment out on the walk. So don't feel like you need to micromanage all of your dog's activities, and let them explore and have some enrichment. And the last most important thing is that we don't greet other dogs on leash. So a critical skill for reactive dogs is loose leash walking. So many dogs that are reactive do not know how to walk on a loose leash, so it is imperative that we teach them this. So what is loose leash walking really? Well, what it is a dog who is aware that their job is to watch your body and that your body is actually relevant to where they get to move. So it's so important we teach a dog to actually pay attention to us, not in the sense that they must focus on us, but that they must be aware of our body. So with my dog, she has really great loose leash skills. She's always walked on a flat collar, even though she is a 100-pound dog. But if I move around, she will follow me without any prompting. So I can move around very easily, and she will follow me the whole time without any cues. So she is aware that my body is relevant to where she should go. But you'll notice that the leash always remains loose. I'm not putting any pressure on it at all, and yet she still follows me in a fairly nice relative heel, although this isn't important. And as soon as I stop, that is also her cue to stop as well. Again, she doesn't have to sit. She can choose the behavior she wants, but she has to know that my movement is relative to hers, and when she's on leash, it is her job to follow me. And we should see our dogs doing that off leash as well. So there should be almost relative little difference between a dog who's on leash and off leash, but the on leash dog must be aware that they can have no more freedom than the extent of the leash. Okay, so how do we teach a dog to actually loose leash walk? Well, again, our goal is to make sure that the dog is aware that our body movement is relative to theirs. And a really nice, easy way is to start by walking backwards. So I'm going to walk backwards with Portia on a loose leash, and I'm going to click and treat her for following me and coming with me. And my goal, again, is to not have a tight leash at any time. So we're going to start moving, and I'm going to click and treat her very first movement because I want her following me. Now she's focusing a little bit on the treat pouch, so I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to delay the reward a little bit, but I really want her to be following my body. She's looking over at the clicker, so now she's at least looking at 2 different places. But one of the things I really like is that she is turning with me when I turn without the leash tightening. So she is definitely following my body. Again, it's important now to try to be a little discriminatory and make sure that I click and treat when she's looking up at my eyes, and I'm not going to click and treat when she's looking down at my pouch. I'm going to try to have my treat hand up near my eyes instead of near my pouch as well. So a big mistake most people make is they will have their hand on their pouch the whole time, and then the dog's always looking at the pouch, and as soon as the treat pouch isn't present, your behavior falls apart. So we want to try to keep our hands away from those treat pouches and even put them in a pocket if you find your dog is incredibly focused. So now that we have a dog who's following us pretty nicely backwards, we need to not walk backwards for the rest of our life. So we are going to switch it up. We are going to pivot into a left side heel, and my new goal will be to then reward Portia for following me on my left side. So here we go. Here's my pivot, and now we're going to walk forward, and I'm going to reach across and reward her on this end. And now the nice thing about this is the treat pouch is now away from her eyesight. So I'm rewarding her for staying in this position. My job is to make sure my hand comes out and rewards her before she gets out of position. So if I allow her to get out of position, I can simply correct this by turning. The dog doesn't have to do the correction I do, and then she simply keeps earning her rewards. When you have a reactive dog, it's very important that your dog be in a consistent place. I don't want Portia to end up on my right side when we turn, so I always want to make sure I use my leash a little bit as a guide to make sure that she stays on the left, and also that the rewards happen on the left, so she doesn't ever try to cut over to my right side as we move. So this looks very nice. We're going to start reducing the reward. So there's the cut over. You saw she tried to go over to the right a little bit. So she corrected herself, and I rewarded that. So we don't want a reactive dog doing that cut over behavior, and we definitely want to make sure she never practices going out in front of me when she's during that initial stage of walking. So there's the cut over, so I'm going to fix that. And there's a nice turn over to my left. So this is going to be our negative punishment method of making sure that a dog doesn't pull forward. Again, we want to just teach the dog that lunging towards things they want is not a good strategy, and so we are still going to use rewards in the sense that when she is walking on a loose leash, she's going to move forward, but if she tries to lurch out and pull forward, we're going to very quickly turn her around. We're not going to choke her. We're just going to teach her as soon as you move forward, you instantly move away. So we're going to get her teased with a bowl of treats that she wants to get to, and we're going to teach her that pulling forward does not work. And I've even taken off my treats so she doesn't just simply follow me because I have rewards on me. So as soon as there's tension, I'm just going to turn her around. You see she comes with me very nicely. She glanced up at me, but one thing you notice about Loose Leash is she's not really looking at me. So she doesn't really think I'm part of this walk. There's a nice little glance. We're getting farther each time, but we really want to watch her understanding that my body is relevant to her motions. So she really needs to learn that, and she is glancing up. There's a nice little look. Good girl. A little closer each time. And again, we want the dog to have success very quickly. Nice. So I'm going to move a little quicker and let her have some success so she doesn't get frustrated. But I really would like to see her walk on a nice loose leash with me. So this is not something that you can do in just a few trials. It will take some practice. But we definitely want the dog looking up at me a lot more. So we're seeing that when we get started. Very nice.